You're listening to The Q Switch with your host, Spence.
Welcome, one and all, to the Q Switch Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Spence. The mission of this show is to tackle subjects currently impacting ophthalmology and pull in leading eye care professionals and industry leaders to discuss their unique perspectives. So let's jump right on in. Today, we're diving into a topic that every ophthalmic practice, whether new or well-established, needs to navigate wisely: adding new ophthalmic equipment to your practice, which is sometimes overlooked and often taken for granted, and that's when costly mistakes can be made. Well, no worry, people. The Q Switch has got you covered. Our guest today, in my view, has got to be the hardest working woman in ophthalmology, but somehow she makes it look easy. Jane Shuman is one of the most trusted voices in the industry, a nationally recognized ophthalmic consultant with over 30 years of experience in practice management and operations. She's helped countless practices grow smarter and not just bigger. Today, she's here to talk us through how to make an equipment purchase a strategic advantage instead of an expensive mistake. We'll talk about budgeting, planning, staff training, implementation, maintenance, and yes, even the landmines you want to avoid. So whether you're thinking about adding your first OCT or upgrading a full diagnostic suite, this episode is for you. Jane, before we get into our discussion, can you share a little bit about your background on the roles you have with iTechs, ophthalmic professional, and phone COA, and what each organization has to offer?
Well, first, Spence, thanks so much for that lovely introduction. I don't know if I'm the hardest working woman in ophthalmology, but it sounds good. So my primary job is co-founder and president, or founder and president of iTechs. It was born out of the need many, many years ago for training technicians, which even back then, although it's a big topic of conversation today, was that there were never enough ophthalmic technicians in the field. Basically, in my opinion, because it's an allied health field that flies under the radar. And I've been in this business since, well, a very long time. And it has never been widely publicized. And this is a field that really, once people get into it, ophthalmology gets under their skin. So that's how this all started. I began consulting while I was still working full-time as a technician and manager. And I did this part-time using PTO and evenings. And I did that for about 6 years. During that period, I also started looking at efficiency, not only to get the workups done faster, but in order to move the patient through in a timely period. This was all in a multi-specialty outpatient clinic. So ophthalmology happened to be down the hall from internal medicine. And I saw firsthand just how different we are, because we would pump through 100 patients a day into the evening out of 9 exam rooms, while the internal medicine patients were waiting an hour for their appointment. So I knew we had something special, and I started consulting on clinic flow at that time.
Mhm.
From there, I did leave the practice to go into consulting full time, followed by my doctors leaving a year and a half later. And I went back in and opened them up, which was a great learning experience for me. So they went into a private practice. During that same time, I became co-editor-in-chief of Ophthalmic Professional. That's now been published for 13 years, and this January, I'm the sole editor-in-chief. It's a journal meant for the entire staff of ophthalmology practices, not just technicians. So the cover story is generally about one practice that does something really, really well. And this may be taking care of their own patients and their own staff, or they bring in new diagnostic devices and get everybody on board using those. So Ophthalmic Professional, it's now in its 13th year, I believe, and gets great reviews from our readership.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's certainly filling a niche because there's nothing dedicated to the staff. And then after COVID, I am a co-founder of Phone COA.
Which even the name, not to cut you off there, phone COA, I had to actually dive into like, usually by its name, you know what it is, but phone COA seems like what? So I go and share what that is. It kind of caught me off guard and it makes me curious. So phone
The phone
COA?
COA was born from COVID,
Okay.
basically, as patient volume started to get back up to pre-COVID numbers. And yet a lot of technicians had left the field and they're responsible for doing the histories. So we use real certified techs
Mm-hmm.
to contact the patients of a practice so that we can preload all their history. And the patients love it because they're doing this in the comfort of their home and they can take their time getting the questions answered. And the doctors really like the level of documentation. And the win is really for the technicians. They now open up a chart and wow, they can just be a tech, making sure that nothing had changed in the 2 weeks since we contacted them. And they can now move on. So we have one client who believes over the 3 years that they've been contracted with us that we have saved them the cost of 2 full-time equivalents, which is not insubstantial.
Wow. That is,
Right.
well, thanks for going over that. 'Cause I kind of read about it on LinkedIn and I was like, how does that even work? So, I mean, that's got to be valuable, especially at the time when it was initiated over COVID, where there was a disconnect there. And it just really turned a lot of practices upside down, not knowing how to deal with, you know, patient flow as it was just with all the masks and PPE and
Mhm.
everything, but also reducing the time they're going to be at the clinic because of social distancing and all. So, I mean, it was necessary now, unnecessary then, but it seems like over time, COA still is a very valuable resource for a lot of practices out there.
It is, and it's most beneficial for new patients or cataractive valve patients where the documentation in person takes, at least 5 or 6 minutes. So
Hmm.
if we can shave that amount of time off a patient visit, then they can actually see more patients in that same period. When there's a gap in the schedule, they can fill it with another slot.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing all three of those organizations that you head up. So let's go ahead and jump to the topic at hand, adding new ophthalmic equipment to a practice. When a practice is thinking about purchasing new equipment, what are the key business and clinical questions they should be asking themselves before even looking at a vendor or considering a product brochure?
I'm not sure I can answer anything but the clinical aspect of that because that's really my passion. But obviously, they have to determine, are they replacing something? Are they able to trade something in? Is it in addition to whatever they have? And of course, budget. But I left that to the doctors. Didn't
Okay.
deal with money.
All right.
Okay. But clinically, do they have space? Where are they going to put it? What's the footprint of it? And is it going to be used in addition to something? Let's say they're buying a topographer for the first time. Well, topography is often used with the A scan, the cataract measurements. So they would want to put those together so that the patient and the technician don't have to walk to all over the office before getting to their exam spot, right? So by saving steps, that way you are creating an efficiency right there, right then and there.
And it seems like even just from that first question, how you responded to it, the way you think is all about clinic flow and efficiency and time saving. So I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, it's true. Um, I like to tell clients to tell their staff when I'm coming in that I'm there to help them. They shouldn't
Mhm.
feel threatened. And it's the old adage, work smarter, not harder.
So that kind of foundation of thinking is so important before jumping into a decision. When you talk about, are these two technologies going to marry together? Do we have the footprint? Some of those operational clinic flow questions, I think, are really at the heart of, a decision to bring equipment in. Because again, you can make a purchase of equipment that doesn't talk to or communicate with something you already have. So those small details are missed, and it could really lead to some seriously costly mistakes. So once a practice has clarity on their needs, how should they approach budgeting for new equipment? And should this be part of a broader capital plan or handled as an individual purchase? And again, I know that's not your area, but what are your thoughts on that?
So I know that there are many of the vendors have financing available for the equipment itself. So I think they need to determine, okay, what is our expendable budget? What are we doing? Can we afford this right now? Are we trading something in, which will knock off, percentage of the price? And it doesn't have to be a trade-in with the manager. I know that there are companies out there that will buy diagnostic and general ophthalmic equipment, and they can then take whatever the money that they get for that and apply it to the down payment. So it's sort of like a pass-through
Hmm.
without feeling any pain from it.
Yeah.
I do have to say that the worst mistake that somebody that can happen is that after the major shows, Academy and ASCRS and Retina Society meetings, that the doctor comes back and says, "Guess what I bought?" Without any forethought, right? I mean, this is great for some of the handheld instruments. Those will help move clinics faster all the time. And usually there's some area of counter space that the handhelds can go. But when we're talking about something where the patient needs to sit at a table, okay, and we've got electricity and other needs that have to be factored in, and some need space all around it, that the administrator and lead clinical staff are now saying, and what does this do? And where does it go?
Hmm.
So I often will find diagnostics in a corner in an exam lane because that's the only place in the office that it can go. When I see that, then you have the problem of scheduling the resource, because do you move a patient that's already in the chair in order to get to the equipment, or do you use a block schedule where that room is available only for multiple procedures? Or
Yeah, I can see where it presents a whole new set of challenges where you have to come up with some of these alternative and creative solutions just to account for this one piece of equipment that just kind of just showed up.
Mhm.
Let's just say that the budget is approved for a particular piece of equipment and the practice is ready to explore options. There is a dizzying array of choices out there. I mean, for instance, with lasers, you know that I saw ophthalmic lasers with Meridian. Other than Meridian, there are 16 other manufacturers of ophthalmic lasers and 30 different lasers out there. So it can be quite like overwhelming for any practice to really choose what's right for them. So
Mhm.
how would you recommend a practice evaluate which technologies are worth the investment and which may be more of a distraction or unnecessary upgrade?
I think the best way is to have a loaner in the office of more than one piece of equipment so that they they can compare apples to apples, not bring in six of something, but two or three that they've done their research, and these are what they feel are going to suit their needs accordingly, and keep them for use for a couple of weeks according to the vendor, and get the doctor or the diagnostic tech that's going to be the primary user of it trained on it. And then they can make their decision, you know, financially as well as how successful it is doing its job.
Well, I would tell you this, that certain equipment, I think that again, being on the vendor side of things, that first of all, I always support, especially with my particular laser. We're a newer manufacturer in the space in the US. So I think we can talk about the technology that we have as much as we want, but people want to see it and feel it. And that's great with lasers, but there are some things that with a laser, I think it's kind of that you never buy it sight unseen. But there are
Mhm.
some things you can buy sight unseen. And I also totally support going with a trial of the short list of options that you think may work for your clinic.
Mhm.
Training also very, very important. All those things I think are critical in being able to make that decision. You want to be a fully informed decision from all aspects, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
And so once they've nailed it down, as we talked about, to a few strong options, the next critical step is choosing the right partner. So what should practices be looking for when selecting a vendor, not just in terms of like the product quality, but also service, support, and long-term partnership potential?
I think the best thing to do is to get references, not just from the vendor, because obviously the vendor's going to give their top five-star reviewers for that, but by finding out who in the area is using the same piece of equipment, and are they happy? What issues have they had with it, and what is the customer service? I know particularly in the EMR arena, there are some that excel at opening tickets and getting back to the client. And then there are others you can put in tickets and it might be months
Oh, wow.
before you hear back. So I think by checking with users, not just the ones the vendor is recommending, but by putting a question out to one of the listservs, who's got this piece of equipment? What did you try? What do they call it? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. Well, I will tell you this, that from, again, looking from the vendor side of things, as I've, been out meeting customers and promoting our products, when I get into, a conversation with a doctor, administrator, technician, nurse, whomever, one of the first questions that come up is, what's the service like? And that has become, especially as equipment becomes more advanced, where they can't just fix it themselves, and they really do need that customer
Mhm.
support and service. You have got to be, top-notch service department to make sure that, God forbid something goes wrong, that they can rely on you. It's like a one-call response, and they have somebody there within a reasonable amount of time and fix that issue. And
Mhm.
again, in my space, not to knock on lasers, but we have a lot of companies, and some are better at service than others. And for us, it's one of the things we put first.
I think that's great.
And so, okay, now that they've made the decision and placed the order, now comes the real work. Let's talk about the actual rollout. What are the critical steps a practice should follow to ensure smooth implementation, both operationally and culturally?
That's a great question. And a lot of that has to do with the size of the practice, right? Obviously, the smaller the practice, the more hands-on people have to be, right? There have to be more hands-on people that are understanding what it does and how to use it. In a larger practice, depending on what it is, you may have several technicians that need to be trained on it. So training is key. And when I train techs, I believe that they're only going to go through the motions unless they understand the why. So when buying equipment, why are we getting it? What does it do? If it's a diagnostic piece, what are we looking at? And if it's a therapeutic piece like a laser, what type of laser is it and what will it correct? What's the goal here? And then I also think they need to understand it from the patient's point of view. Okay, so patient will get comfortable. What is the patient going to experience for that? So on a diagnostic, the technicians can sit down and get the test. Not so much with the lasers because, we're not correcting anything. So the doctors are using it. They need to be trained on how to use it, how to set it up, and all of that. But the technicians that are going to be assisting need to understand what is happening and what are they responsible for. And if they need to make an adjustment during the procedure, what knob are they supposed to touch? You don't want the doctor to say, see that one over there, and the tech's going, this one or this one, right?
Yeah.
So somebody needs to know what it is that they're doing there. So that all goes back to training, right? It's all a matter of communicating clearly, perhaps having a cheat sheet for the tech so that if only two technicians know how to use the equipment, somebody else can go on and read this step by step and follow directions and be able to help.
Well, I will tell you this, that I've sold lasers now, and it's their commodity. But before this, I sold a very unique piece of equipment that really was kind of nichey, and it was a clinic-based diagnostic piece of equipment. And there was a lot of tech involvement, tech training involved. And the technicians, after the demo, didn't like it or was too complicated. It didn't matter what the doctor decided. The technicians made the decision, not so much the doctor. So having that clean, concise and clear onboarding and training for the technicians for those pieces of equipment where it requires a high level of engagement on that side of things is absolutely critical. I think just as well for doctors, people think that, like for lasers, once again, as an example, that they're highly technical, they're lasers. Doctors still want simple. They want to get on the laser, treat the patient, and move on. So all the bells, whistles, they want simplicity. I learned that, as I grew into this role, that doctors must love lasers. These they're really smart people. They don't. They want the thing to work well, consistently, and efficiently, and get the next patient, in the chair. Because again, 100 patients a day at some of these places, to try and figure out what screen to go to, what button to push. It's a distraction. And again, speaking to your expertise, it takes more time. It takes away from efficiency and clinic flow. So whether it's technician or doctor, you have to have a great onboarding, and needs to be really effective to get the, lack of a better term, buy-in for that piece of technology, I would think.
And the last thing that you want to have happen is for the technician to be questioning how to use it with the patient in the chair, right?
Absolute nightmare.
And then they
Yes.
bring in a senior tech and the user manual.
Oh God. That's not a good look.
And the patient sitting, do these people know what is happening here? I mean, things are going to happen, right? We've
Mhm.
seen things break in the middle of being used, but that's the exception. It shouldn't be the rule.
Yeah, well, even with the best intentions, mistakes can still happen. So even like in your 30 years of experience, what are some of the most common mistakes you've seen practices make when adding new equipment, and how can they avoid them?
Well, the number one is the doctor coming back and saying it's the arrival of such and such.
Does that happen a lot? Is that a common thing? I'm sure that, when you're at the show, whether it's AAO, they get all charged up, on the convention floor. Oh, this does had this great, demo at this, booth, and they just make this, snap emotional decision like it's a, pack of gum at the checkout counter at the grocery store.
Well, I saw that firsthand when the Tear Lab first came out.
Oh,
And
really?
that
Okay.
was small and countertop safe. They were swarming around this vendor booth like they were bees swarming around the hive. But that makes sense. But you don't do that with a laser, right? You
Mhm.
don't do that with the automatic refracting station.
Right.
Those really need a lot of planning. So by not planning and not determining where it's going to go, who's going to use it, when are we going to use it? So something that is used for every patient or the multitude of patients, yeah, that needs to be placed somewhere central or where every patient is. I'm thinking of an autorefractor, right? So placed in a location where anybody that needs it can have it done, especially as they're walking into the office, right? But something that is used very, very specifically, let's talk about scheduling A-scan appointments. That the biometer does not have to be front and center. That can be, with the surgical coordinator, if that person knows how to run it and get the proper measurements. So planning for it, I think, is big.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you can probably, in many cases, have the vendor's rep come in and help you make that determination.
Well, one of the things when I was at Alcon, we had the LensX laser. This is back in like the 2010s, first got launched, and part of kind of they called it a site assessment, where the Alcon laser guy would go out there and he'd have actually it's like a rollout actual footprint of the laser. That was a big thing because the LensX laser is a pretty big footprint, and so they actually put it. They take the little like map of the actual footprint of the laser and put it in different places around the clinic to see where it best fit.
Very good.
Yeah, so it was really cool. I mean, it was the actual size. And then, of course, beyond that, they had the virtual placement when technology got a little better, where you could do a virtual and then put the laser in the room where you saw it on the screen and stuff. Yeah, so I mean, being able to, I think from a positioning standpoint in the clinic, I mean, God forbid you put some huge piece of equipment in a closet where it doesn't fit. Or you just simply you don't have the clinic size to accommodate such a large piece of technology. So I think again that's a well overlooked mistake, because again, doctors can get excited, practice can get excited about a certain technology they're going to bring on, but not done the proper pre-planning as you mentioned.
Right. And on the flip side of that, I have seen a piece of diagnostic, let's say a Humphrey visual field or an OCT in an exam-sized room by itself. And that's a poor use of real estate in my
Yeah.
mind.
So turning the page, and again, probably not, in your wheelhouse, but maybe respond by sharing what what you've seen or some of the best practices you've worked with who take a look at the return on investment. How should practices measure the return on the investment? Is it always about revenue generation, or are there other indicators that show a practice that show the value of a piece of equipment they've purchased?
Well, certainly the financial is first, right? How many uses do you have to get the money back? And is this self-pay, or is this reimbursable, or is it a combination of both? And then, at what period of time is it pure profit? That would be first. The other is this going to be is this going to take less time for the user than what we're currently doing?
Is it going to add? Is there a benefit to? Is it going to improve on what you already have?
Great way to put it, because there are things, I mean, now with AI coming into medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk about AI scribes.
Hmm.
Well, if you can use a good AI system to get that documentation in, well, and it's accurate, and the doctor's happy to sign off on the documentation from that, then the person who has been your scribe, you don't want to get rid of a valuable staff member, but they can be reallocated to another area of the clinic where the need is great. I was recently at an office that was not ophthalmology, and he was using an ambient scribe. And I just saw the evaluation, the after visit note, and it was really pretty accurate.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And what we're doing with phone COA
Oh, okay.
is, replacing what the technician would do, right? For a new patient, initial history can be 5, 6 minutes on average. And of course, there are patients where it's a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
So by taking that off the job of the technician, we're now saving them that kind of time that other patients can be seen. And the patient in question is moving through the office much more quickly.
So, of course, getting ROI over time means the equipment needs to perform consistently, number one, but also stay in great shape. Once the equipment is in place, what does a good maintenance plan look like, and who in the practice should be responsible for managing it?
The jury's out on that one, because it's really split. Do we pay the money up front for a PM, an annual checkup, and what is the cost involved in that, and the likelihood of it needing repair?
Mm.
So there are many practices that believe in having the maintenance contract. But on the flip side of it, they also say, if I can go 5 years without it, then I'll pay for the repair. So I don't think there is a good answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess it would depend on how new the technology is, and like there was a piece of equipment that again you used to sell broke down all the time, and so to have an extended service plan, great technology just wasn't ready for prime time, and so doctors willing to use it with the understanding that it could break, but if it breaks, make sure you get it taken care of, and that's why we really stressed getting an extended service plan. But then something like a laser, I mean, I don't care what laser you buy, they're pretty robust and they kind of last a long time for the most part. And so, as you were saying, that if that's going to last me 3, 5, years without a warranty, and it's probably not going to break, if it is, it's worth just the one-time repair. It's more cost effective and makes more sense to just go without the extended service plan and pay the one-time, repair should that happen.
It's like my appliances at home too.
Yeah, very, very much similar. And so finally, as new technologies keep entering the market, you mentioned AI, robotics, automation. How can practices stay ahead of the curve without overextending themselves financially or operationally?
I'm not sure practices need to be ahead of the curve unless they're one of the cutting edge practices in the country or the world. People seek them out because of their technology, because of their advances. Because let's do the long-term studies, right? Let's see, is this still a hot item and a beneficial item in 2 years? Let's read the reviews. Let's talk to people. So I don't know that, I guess if you're in a really competitive market, staying ahead of the curve matters quite a bit. And depending on what the patient base is, the
Mhm.
more research the patients are doing these days, the more they come in and they say, I want X, Y, and Z. I've got to see this doctor because he's got the best. He's got the newest, the cutting edge stuff. But in other areas of the country, that's not quite as important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see where that could be the case. I'm here in Miami, a very, patient, rich environment in terms of cataract surgery and ophthalmology. And so, I mean, there's lots of ophthalmologists down here to serve that community and treat those patients. And a lot of those guys like to, distinguish themselves by having advanced, technology in their practices, whether it's the IOL, laser assisted cataract surgery, contactless. There was it called the DSLT, the new technology from I think Alcon bought it from Belkin. So having these new technologies, despite the investment, they want to be again out in front because that attracts a certain type of clientele, like in say Boca versus Miami Gardens, say, or somewhere in a rural town where they just want to get standard cataract surgery with a monofocal IOL. All the flash and technology and bells and whistles don't really, resonate with the patient base in, say Ocala or something like that. Thanks for sharing that. So I got to say, that's a wrap for today's episode. Massive props to you, Jane, our guest, for sharing your many actionable insights. This has been a treat. So thanks for coming on.
No, thanks for having me, Spence. I've enjoyed our time together.
Good. Well, from understanding your why behind the purchase to planning for training, support, and ROI, I hope today's conversation laid out a clear roadmap that folks out there can use at their own practices. Jane, if a member of our audience wanted to connect with you to discuss today's topic in more depth or to tap into your resources at iTex, Phone COA, and Ophthalmic Professional, what is the best way they can contact you?
J. Shuman, SHUMAN, at iTex, EYETECHS.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure you'll have your email box be blowing up in the next couple of weeks here.
That would be great. I'd appreciate it.
Well, good. Well, you provide a good service to the industry, and we appreciate you having your services available to us. It's very, very valuable.
Thank you.
So, as always, we make a point to thank Riverside FM and Passionate Media for making this show possible. We appreciate all of you out there for tuning in for another episode of the Q Switch Conversations podcast. I'm Spence, and I am out.
You're listening to The Q Switch with your host, Spence.